This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results. Are you ready to feel the power?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast. I got to figure out how to get through this thing, man, because it seems like it's been a while since we've recorded, but we brought some good energy with us today. We've got Mr. Adam Bowe, who is the CEO and co-founder of Cake. And I'm not talking about cake that I like to eat in large quantities. I'm talking about Cake, the online platform, marketplace, venue, exchange, whatever you want to call it, for transacting acquisition business of insurance agencies, insurance books of business, pieces of agencies, pieces of books of business. This guy has developed a product that is going to make it very easy for every single one of us to maximize our net worth on our own balance sheets, because it changes the way the game is played if you're looking to acquire or you're looking to divest. So, no pressure, Adam. I mean, we're just going to change a bunch of people's lives with Cake out there and the course of their family tree for generations to come. So, how's it going?
Man, that's the goal. It's going well. Happy to be here. It's hard to have a bad day when I get to spend a little bit of it with you two.
Oh, thanks, man. So listen, probably I gotta believe like one of the number one questions I'm gonna ask you, and I'll be honest if I was thinking correctly or not. What's the most frequently asked question that you get when people meet you the first time?
Yeah, why Cake?
Why did you name it Cake?
Yeah. Why'd you name it
Exactly.
Cake?
That is exactly what I was going to say. Let's go ahead. Let's get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Why did you call it Cake? And then we can focus on the other stuff.
So, and apologies about my dog. She doesn't usually bark, but if we get a few audio jump ins, then we'll
I honestly thought it was
something.
one of your kids with his sheet over their head, like it's a ghost or something, man.
Yeah.
I had no idea what it was, but you're good.
No, so my first job out of college was a company called Big Ass Fans, and ever since then,
Hey, what'd you guys do?
Yeah, we sold Big Ass Fans, but ever since then, man, like I was a cold caller and trying to get past receptionists, like they'd be like, no, you can't talk to them, right? But we had these like phone donkeys, and I'd be like, ma'am, I'm so sorry, like I just need to talk to Dave, right? And I really want to let him squeeze my ass. And I'd pull up the phone donkey, right? And she thought that was like hilarious, right? And so like the name itself, right?
You need to bring in on drops.
Yeah, man, you had to be creative as a cold caller, but then you'd go to like conferences and stuff, and people wanted to talk to you because you were Big Ass Fans. And so it's just like, man, having that name, that kind of cool, off-center name, it stuck with me. And so Cake, we look at a book of business, we can sell the full book of business, right? Or we can sell slices. But also Cake is a celebratory moment. So someone maximizing their value by selling that full book, right? Or someone actually choosing to grow and having that strategic growth moment, right? Like Cake is you have that at each point of your life where there's a celebration. And that's like kind of the feeling that we want to bottle for an agent, whether they're on the buy side or the sell side. So I needed a fun name, right? And after slicing and dicing and picking out like how we were going to do the books, Cake kind of led the way on finding a good name there.
Coming soon from Adam Bowe Enterprises, champagne.
That's
that'll be the next one.
Cake and
But no, I
champagne.
mean, it makes sense, man. And I mean, I think obviously pie insurance took pie. That could have been a different,
Slice of a pie,
different angle. But I mean, I think it's interesting because it's short, one word, sticks. People are gonna at least be like, oh, the cake guy. What's the cake guy do? Well, actually, it's interesting. I think you can have a decent conversation around it and everything else. But I mean, this thing can go, as cakes can, into layers, right? Like this thing can go several layers deep. I think that
Go ahead and unpack it.
yeah, I'm just unpacking like crazy over here, just Johnny unpack. But most of us are used to people calling the agencies right now, trying to hammer us to let them at least have an exploration call to talk about how much money we could make if we sell our agency. And a lot of us have friends who have sold. Like I've got many friends at this point who have exited their agencies, made multiple millions of dollars doing it, and are perfectly happy doing that. That's not who I am, man. Like I just don't see, even if I were to sell the agency, and I understand that it's easy for me to say that right now, but I don't know that I would change, man. I've always thought this way about if I win the lottery and everything else. Like I have to stay busy. Like I've got to do something. Bored. So even if it wasn't the agency, there would be something else that I would go do. So because of the fact that I want to stay involved, I really haven't like looked at my exit seriously at all. Not even a little bit, to be honest with you. I'm preparing everything for the time when that comes, but due to the way that my agency's set up, I'm either going to perpetuate through the people that are here that are not going to exit when I do, or I will set them up to where if we grow the agency to a good number and we get a great multiple on exit, everybody makes a fortune, right? Yeah. Because I want my team to benefit from that. And I talk about it to them. I talk about it on the podcast. There's plenty of record of me letting everybody know exactly what my intentions are, and I'll never change them. But I want to make sure that they always know, this isn't something that happened overnight. But the way that we looked at doing it is, instead of trying to figure out like a partnership, like a straight partnership deal kind of a thing. I've been talking with Kerry Wallace about this. Instead of looking at it that way, just taking a slice of the agency, whatever that percentage is, and allow that to be owned by the employees via ESOP so they can begin to build their asset. And that also gives them the ability to leverage that for funding to buy me out through distribution down the road if I just want them to perpetuate the agency and keep it running. Otherwise, if they don't, then obviously they would get the same valuation I would get, and they would have a nice chunk of change to, little walking around money in the event that an exit does happen. But the last thing I'm going to do is ever leave the people hanging out to dry that helped me build the agency, right?
Well, so I think that's like my favorite thing about getting into insurance and talking to agents, right, is that if you're pitching InsurTech and you say, this technology will allow you to replace one of your workers, right? Not going to work. They're not buying that, right? But if you say this technology will free up time and make your existing workers more effective, right, for them to be 100%. Able to grow and take on the next thing, that is going to work, right? And so the value of like looking at like the care that agents have for their teams, for their insured, right? And I think that's where Cake wants to fit in, is that we're not going to replace PE acquisition. We're not going to replace, the hubs and the AccuSures. I think those are like great options for some folks, right? But what we want to do is be another option, a third option that says, hey, if you want to sell and still get really great, maximize your value, right, but sell to another independent agent, right, that's going to treat your team or treat your the insured, your customers, like you do, then here's an option. So we want agents to play both sides of that. And I think, you've built it right. You've got your sons in there, right? Like on the team. You've also got team that's similar to family, but some agents don't have that family member that's willing to take over. And I think, this is the ideal marketplace to allow them to be able to scratch that similar emotional itch, but sell outside of their team, right? Sell to another agent that's going to treat their book, treat their employees like that.
Yeah. I think,
So hold on 1 second,
Yeah,
real
go
quick,
ahead.
and then I'll let you roll, Kyle. But like literally, you walked right to where I wanted you to go. Like
Yeah.
I literally I opened the door, and with zero practice or coaching, you went exactly in the direction I was hoping you were going to go. And that direction is, I think that there are a lot of people out there, because of how close knit we are in our agencies, because we are truly small businesses for the most part. You do have a close relationship, a close working relationship with your team. It does have more of a family feel to it. And because of that, I do feel like there are a lot of agents out there that are not, even though that might be a really good move for them to go ahead and look at their exit right now or whatever else, they don't want to sell to private equity. They don't want to sell to institutional lending because they don't want to see anything negative happen to the family, right? And so
Yeah.
if it's always more, it's always a softer approach, or perceived, at least in my opinion, for you to sell to another independent that's going to be in the business for the foreseeable future, and then it's not going to upset anything. It's not going to rock the boat too much. And I think that provides you with a huge opportunity. A couple years ago, we had Joe Clevenger on the podcast, and he had been making some acquisitions on some, books of business and smaller agencies in all, different parts of the country. But Joe's from Indiana. And, when I asked him, what's your strategy, man? How do you go about doing it? His response was, I look for the oldest guys in the room when I go to conferences, and I sit at their tables for lunch, and I make friends with them. And over time, as they're ready to exit, I end up being able to get an opportunity to buy a book from them because they know who I am, what I'm about, and all of that stuff. That's one way. But not everybody has the time, patience, or even the ability to be geographically where they need to be to take that approach. So you take literally almost every barrier down that I can think of for somebody to look at buying books of business, to actually, make offers and buy books of business, or agencies, or even pieces of it. And I think one of the most intriguing parts is that you don't even have to buy somebody's entire book. You can just go in and buy a slice of a book, which may just be, one carrier's worth of business. So I wanted to bring all of that back together, that I do think that with the way that we're set up in our agencies, this makes it a lot more attractive. Now, the question becomes, how do you get that person who may or may not be technologically forward thinking to go on to an online warehouse, for lack of a better term, an exchange, marketplace, whatever we want to call it, to list or to buy? So that would be my one concern.
Yeah. And I think, Kyle, I want to come back to your comment in a second, but I think the way, we've had practice. So the team came from a manufacturing marketplace. We were attaching, pretty high-end technology to manufacturing. And it's a similar demographic, right? You have a ton of agents that are forward thinking. You have a ton of manufacturers that are thinking about their tech stack. You also have some old school guys and girls, right? And so what we've done is, one, we've simplified the onboarding, right? Like we need, 6 to 8 pieces of information to solve that discovery piece, right? We're talking line of business, carrier, state, total premium. We can get into loss ratio and retention score if you have those details available, but really it's like policies in force and customers, right? That helps bring those two agents together, because on the buy side, that's enough information for you to kind of quickly say, I want more information, or, doesn't fit what I'm after, right? Then we can get into, we've got a private deal room where it's NDA locked, and that provides that security and trust, because the agents that are selling, if they don't have that relationship that you were kind of talking about on like the personal side, right? They don't totally want to be known that they're selling, right? And so all listings are only tied to your username. They're not tied to your like agency name or your personal name, right? And then when we get into more details, when we're starting to share like book report details or carrier downloads, right? That's when we're in the deal room. Everything's NDA locked, and there's a little bit more security there. And I think what we're trying to do is replicate that that personal relationship development side, because like ultimately, and these are some tools that I can talk about that are coming very soon, but ultimately what we don't want to do is compete with the guy that has developed those relationships over time. I think that they actually still need a marketplace or some tools to ensure that they're handling everything correctly, right? Like that we've got all the legal I's and T's dotted and crossed, right? That we've got a valuation tool to be able to make sure that we're speaking the same language on that valuation, to help with a place or repository to drop in policy level details, right, for the book migration. Those are all things that like big M&A teams have, right? And when you've got a single agent that's an owner of an agency, so they're a small business owner, they've got all types of issues going on there or tasks to do that comes with that. They're probably a producer, and then now you're asking them to run an M&A team. That's a lot of hats to wear, and so we just want to make that a more effective and efficient, and ultimately that process be more of a celebration, less of a hassle.
For sure. I don't know that what I had before was even relevant anymore. I think I was like we've gone down a different road. I think it was just you had talked about how introducing a technology and it'll replace an employee, and maybe that might not register with somebody. It was similar to I had to go. I had to fight that objection every day when I was selling the PEO stuff, because they'd be like, well, that's going to get rid of my job if you guys come in and do all the admin. So they're like, no, dude, we still need somebody to run the ship. Right. So it just kind of drew that parallel in my brain. But talk about some of these tools that you just mentioned that are coming up.
Yeah. So, the way the platform's set up right now, you can create and list slices, right? We actually have our book valuation tool in demo on the platform, and it's a machine learning powered book valuation tool. Dave touched on Carrie Wallace earlier. She's a strategic partner of Cake and is involved in the project. And what we've kind of worked with her and some of the other valuation experts on is ingesting their manual process of evaluating these books, but also like layering in a ton of the industry data that's available, right? And started to standardize and provide a valuation that gets down to like a carrier, a line of business in a state, right? So like really, really boutique valuations based on the makeup of your book. And we can give you a low, a median, and a high valuation for that slice, right? Now it's a swag because we're not asking a lot of details that go into it, right? Again, we're giving you an idea of the valuation of your slice with like 6 to 7 data points, right? So really quick, really easy, and it's all data points that agents know off the top of their heads. But then if you want that dollars and cents valuation, that's where our strategic partnership with Carrie comes in, and we can actually make that process a lot faster and easier by gathering the data that we've already gathered up front, right? So what she does is kind of like art and science, and we're starting to build out a more robust science piece to allow for that art piece to be kind of the main portion there. So you can value, you can list, right? You can engage with buyers in a private chat, and then you can also go into that deal room. Now, some of the products that are coming soon is a buyer profile, right? And that buyer profile is where we start to allow for that non-compete with the kind of existing way of agent to agent sales, right? Right now, you go out and you develop that relationship, or you send out a bunch of emails, or you go to conferences in glad hand, right? And we don't want to introduce, if you've already found your seller, and if you're a seller and you've already found the person you want to buy with, that we don't want to introduce any sort of competition in that setting if you're comfortable with what you've netted out. What we want to do is add structure there. So that's, again, we can drop you straight into the deal room, right? We can layer in some of our legal and accounting resources, and we can guide you through like what these deals typically look like, because there's a vast kind of spread of experience on the agent level of folks that have done 3 to 5 acquisitions, right? And then folks that are exploring their first acquisition. And it's a big purchase. And so we want to make sure that this isn't something you live to regret if it like had all the makings of a good transaction, but you stubbed your toe a few times, a few times on kind of a new process that you were, not used to, right? It's a big kind of complicated area. And so us being able to provide those tools to add some structure to that deal, I think that's an additional way that we can work with agents. And that's really what we're looking to do, right? Is just make it as easy and as efficient for agent to sell to agent. And whether that's a full book, a full agency, or a slice of a book, right? We want to make that transaction itself really tight.
Well, I think too, there's probably some people, not probably, I can about guarantee you there are some people sitting out there right now thinking to themselves, but Adam, why would I want to just buy a piece of somebody's book of business? Why wouldn't I buy the whole thing? Or why wouldn't I buy the whole agency? Where's the real appeal there? And if it's not for the whole thing, how are you even able to make enough money to make this worth your while? Where are you trying to screw me with hidden fees, Adam? I mean, that's really where it ends up going. But I mean,
yeah,
I think one of the things that really makes Cake such a cool platform is the fact that you can really just buy down, just like you could truthfully, if somebody listed just a handful of accounts in their book of business and you happen to want just that handful of accounts, you can go do it. So why do you want to give people that flexibility? And then depending on how you answer, I may throw my 2 cents in.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I think it can be like, there's a guy on the platform that says, if you have a single surety policy, right, he'll buy it and then set up this is kind of outside of our flow, but set up kind of a boutique relationship where if you get any more surety business coming your way, right, there's a little bit of a finder's fee. And I think, part of it, Dave, one approach is it's a niche, right? So you have agents that are within their Main Street agents. They've got a buddy in town that has a commercial trucking business, right? So they take on his business. Well, they're not really set up to service commercial trucking, and they don't have kind of automated COI access, right? Like it's just things that become a burden for them. And the premium looks good, right? The commission rate looks good on that. But over time, it's an operationally heavy kind of piece to service, right? Well, you've also got agents that specialize in commercial trucking, right? Specialize in D&O, right? And so you can actually find and sell a piece of your book that's a niche that doesn't fit your strategy. And then for someone that why they'd want to buy that, well, that's a niche that you're incredible at, right? So you might have better rates, better service, better coverage. You also might be in the money with that carrier, right? And so you're buying that premium for dimes on the dollar because of your boosted commission rate or your profit sharing, right? And then you get into that in the money piece. If it's Q4 and I'm $100,000 away in premium for getting into where I want to be within the profit sharing, well, it might make sense for you to buy $100,000 book of premium with that carrier, right? And so I think that, while we don't, I don't necessarily want to push slices, right? I don't think that they're any better or worse than full book buys. I think that flexibility is something that agents deserve, right? You guys are entrepreneurs or small business owners, and you should be able to own and operate your business how you want to.
I think from my perspective, it really boils down to, I mean, all of those are good and valid reasons. I think the one that probably most agents should be looking at or just paying attention to at a bare minimum is how it affects profit sharing. Not just from volume. You can buy down your loss ratio, because if you pick up a book that's got clean losses and you're running a little hotter than you would normally run, you may be able to buy that book and buy down your loss ratio to the point that you qualify for more money at profit sharing and offset, if not replace the money you spent to buy the slice. Same thing holds true with volume. I may have a carrier that's just, they're not one of our strong carriers. They're not somebody that we run into business, that they're going to write on a regular basis. And so I need to get rid of that. I'm probably going to go ahead and I'm going to terminate my contract rather than me, have that business continue to sit here and get paid out, on a legacy account with a carrier I don't represent anymore because I don't really have anywhere else to go. Maybe I monetize that one time, get it out and move on to the next thing and have a clean break. Or, I'm in a situation where I could be, where I could be, in a just barely off from hitting that next contingency level in volume, and I buy it into a higher one.
And I think too, like there's a lot of scenarios, right? So maybe I make an acquisition, I buy a full agency, right? But it's a carrier, like you said, 5% of it's a carrier I don't really want to mess with, right? Or it's a line of business that I'm interested in, or a state, or whatever the area is, right? But you could make a full acquisition and then turn around and sell that slice, right? And so it just provides an added layer of flexibility to agents that I think is needed. And I think too, like you were talking about that the carrier relationships, we're seeing a lot of carriers kind of either pull out of markets or change their structure and within markets, right? And I think giving agents some power in that relationship, because it's ultimately a partnership, right? It's a relationship between that agent and the carrier, giving them the ability to maximize or kind of strategically organize their book around a carrier, right? And maybe you book roll, but 10% of it you couldn't bring over to that new carrier, right? That 10%, that's something you could slice off. So again, I think there's a lot of different areas where a slice makes sense. And we want to be able to structure a deal however it makes best sense between the buyer and the seller.
You would think the carriers would put in some sort of limitation on like books being bought Q4 to jump up to the next level. Like they would have to start figuring that out. Like I
think maybe they will eventually, right?
Yeah.
I tell you right now, I don't know that they're it'd be interesting to hear how many carrier reps are listening to this, but I don't know how quickly they move on something like this. And so I think that there's at least right now, there isn't really a lot of barriers for something like that, right? And I think that we're constantly going to be on the side of our buyers and sellers, which are agents, right? And so we'll change and adapt as that, if that takes place. But yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how carriers react, because I also think carriers, like, ultimately there's 17% of agents are 66 or older, right? And 40% of agencies expect to change hands in the next 5 years. And so my kind of like tagline with a lot of folks that aren't agents, right, is these transactions are going to happen, right? Like they're going to have a lot of retirements. You're going to have a lot of agencies changing hands. And so it's whether it happens on a kind of a standardized flow and on a platform that can build the tools that helps with that, right? Or they just happen kind of in the wild, wild west. And I think with carriers, it becomes really interesting. Like, what if an agent raises his hand, it's one of your best agents that needs to sell in that market, right? Well, carriers should want to be able to say, hey, these 20 agents have to take a look at that book, or should take a look at that book, because it fits their business really well, and that's premium we want to keep in house. So I've talked to like a few like market reps for carriers, and they're keeping an eye on this because they want their agents to win as well, especially the ones they have a good relationship with. So I think ultimately it could be a quad win, right? A win-win-win-win. Buyer wins, seller wins, insured wins, and carrier wins, because the policy ends up with the carrier or the agent that's best set up to be successful with that, right? And so the carrier's happy, the customer's happy, and both agents are happy.
What's been the biggest challenge, man, getting things on track to where you're headed and where you want to go?
Data. Data. So like, I think we're, and a lot of people talk about data, but I think what we're where we're trying to be, right, is super easy for sellers to onboard while also like respecting buyers' times and energy and effort, right? So it's quality data that's on the platform. And I think the carrier reports, right? They come in a lot of different formats from the different carriers, right? The AMS systems, it's hard to get data out of it. And so right now there's a ton of operational lift on that end. I kind of prefer it that way because that allows me to get my arms around the problem, and then people don't have to tell me what's hard. I can see what's hard, and then you can start to build products for the things that you can automate, right? And then just say that's going to take a little bit more white glove service in the future. But yeah, I think it's data. It's also, and this is I think a good thing. It's earning the seller's trust, right? Like we're new to the industry, and ultimately the sellers are selling their babies, right, or a portion of something that they've got a lot of self-worth tied up in, and a lot of time, energy, and effort tied up in. And so I'm working really hard to get the message out there, and also just allow people to see me face to face, right? But know that like we're on the agents team, and we're building this 4 agents to play both roles. And so I think it'll take a little bit of time to get the seller's trust, but we've already had some cool moments where like people have posted in Facebook groups like, where do I sell a piece of my business, right? And
I was
someone
just
has
in one of
posted,
those threads, man. I was just in one of those threads over the weekend in IAOA, and posted that Cake's just getting ready to take the industry by storm. May not have heard of him yet, but probably need to check it out. Let me ask you this, man. I think this is just a couple of random observations. Number one, I've said it a bunch. I'm a tweener. I'm not the old guard. I'm not the new guard. I'm not as young as you and Kyle, but I'm also not as old as my parents. So that's how I view myself. I'm somewhere in between. I'm probably more forward thinking from a tech standpoint, I would think, than my average peer. Not that I'm bragging about that. I'm not saying I know more about tech and that I'm a smarter tech person. I just think that I see its use in application, and I'm willing to take a chance on it more so than somebody else that's probably sitting in my chair at my age. Because of that, I don't think that I'm a tough sell. I don't think that I'm difficult for you to get me to jump on board, to list something, to buy something through the platform. And, I get your point. I know exactly what you're saying. It's their baby. This is something people have built. But what about people's houses? You can buy and sell those online now. What about their vehicles? You got companies like Carvana where you don't even go test drive it or anything. You literally just go online, buy it, transactions done. Or, the places that'll buy your car from you and you sell it to them sight unseen. They come get it and it's gone. There's a subset of our population that's already handling major business transactions online through channels very similar to what Cake's going to do in the independent channel. So I don't think that there's necessarily an issue with the concept of conducting a transaction like that. There shouldn't be. I mean, we literally can do about anything at all electronically at this point, right? I guess the question I have, and when you and I were talking about my involvement, with Cake, one of I wouldn't say it was a concern from a negative standpoint. I would just say an item to address is probably a better term. Is, what are we doing from an education standpoint? What are we doing to ease these people's minds in what they're doing? It's one thing to have an FAQ on Cake itself in the process of getting something listed, buying, or whatever else. But I know who you have involved in this project with you, and you've got a lot of people that have the ability, who have been there, done that, with Kerry Wallace leading the parade, that are really valuable resources to these agents that can guide them through the process and give them, that advice. So, I mean, I guess where I'm going with it is, like anything else that's a technology product today, the idea is we're not here to replace human interaction and experience. We're here to enhance it. We're
Yeah.
here to make it to where those people work better. And I think Cake's the same way. I do think that, it's a slick online platform. I think that you can really path of least resistance, make an acquisition or have an acquisition happen to you. But I also don't think in your philosophy, in the culture, and in the way things are set up, that it's one of those deals where it's like, okay, this is one of those websites you go to. We're going to have a few buttons you can click, maybe a chat bot that's going to do a marginal job of pulling keywords out of your question that's still just going to link you back to something in our FAQ. I mean, we've talked about this. You're talking about doing educational webinars. You're talking about having, like a video journey for people so they can just get those basic questions answered and get the comfort level they need to take the next step in the transaction. And I think it's really important for us to let everybody listening to this know that it's not just 100% all automated, computer deal. If you need help, if you have a question, we understand the gravity of what you're doing here. We would never put you in a position to have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, you said it best, man. And I think the best way that I can, or I guess the North Star that we're driving towards, right, is we're a conduit for the agents that have been there and done that and that have that advice, right? Like we bring some of that, right? And it's more process flow education, right? But from the agent's perspective and from the folks like Kerry Wallace, who isn't an agent, but is sitting, with agents on that side of the table, that we want to be a conduit and a platform to highlight that education, right? And so that's stuff that we're working on. But it's also, it gets down to, I mean, you were touching on like the culture, right? Like it gets down to like the details of like who we're talking to. Ultimately we would like to have lenders in here, and we've talked to a few banks, right? That, but it's not any bank that'll take our call, right? It's banks that do business with insurance agents.
Yeah, it's
right?
like your Westfields, your Oak Street, Live Oak, all of those guys. I mean, there's a bunch of them out there.
Yeah, and so it's like it's making sure that everyone that touches this process understands the intricacies of an independent insurance agent, right? And so we're not bringing bastardized tech from other industries. It's all geared towards the independent agent, and then also we're building that scaffolding, like you said, to facilitate those deals and those human interactions in a trusted, secured, and more efficient manner.
Well, I look at it like this, man. We had Kevin Ring from the Institute of Work Comp Professionals on the podcast several times.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we talked about when we were doing our Shop Talk series with him was just the fact that when somebody gets injured at work and has to file a workers' comp claim, most of the time, I want to say, Kyle, he said it was like 90%, like in the 90s,
87%. Or no, it might have been 93%.
Yeah, it was some incredibly huge but oddly specific percent that it was the first time that person ever had been injured at work, ever had an injury. They have no idea what the process looks like. They have no idea what their responsibilities are. They don't have any idea what their employer's responsibilities are. They don't know how much out of pocket they're going to have. And I mean, if you think about it, if you had a somewhat, like, not life-threatening, but a serious enough injury that it was going to cost $10,000 or more in medical bills for you to get fixed, you'd probably start freaking out a little bit if you didn't have somebody at the agency level or your employer level or both, throw in the carrier too, that says, hey, we understand this is probably stressful for you. This has likely never happened to you before, but we want you to know this is not the first time this has happened to us. And it's our job to make sure that you come through this thing and we get you back to your family in the same condition that you were in before you were injured. And if we can't do that, at least get you as close as we can. And the system is set up to make sure that happens. I think that messaging needs to happen with Cake, because I think your best opportunities, at least in my mind, I think about it, we've got the established pros. We don't need to teach them. They get it. We just need to tell them to play nice with everybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you've got a whole bunch of people that have probably got a great opportunity in front of them, but they've never sold a book before. Or for people who are growing their agency and they want to look at acquisitions, never bought a book, never bought a slice, never bought an agency. and they just don't even know what to expect, where to start, any of that stuff. And to me, that's a golden opportunity, because
Yeah.
these people aren't going to go, like, number one, I don't think that the average agent out there really enjoys dealing with venture capital. I think that they deal with venture capital because the multiples make them willing to deal with venture capital. But at the end of the day, I can tell you, I've said this, I know my friend Mike Stromzo did this, but when my exit comes, I kind of just want to exit. Like, I don't want to have an earn out. I don't want to have to work for somebody else in the building that I worked in for the last several years while I built my agency. I actually have said that I would take less money as a multiple if I could just walk away and not have to deal with anything, because for me, it's not worth it to stick around. I want to get on with living the rest of my life.
Doing it. It's like,
right. I want to just go do life at that.
Go hang out in Key West and take sport shots and root beer barrels.
Exactly. Exactly.
So this makes way more sense to me to do in a virtual space than Carvana. Like Carvana.
Yeah.
If I'm buying a car, I want to go and touch it, feel it, see what does it smell like. Like it's a physical, tangible thing. Same thing with a house. I'm not going to buy a house without going and walking through the place and taking a look at it. And because, I mean, you can see pictures, but like that doesn't always do it justice. But this makes a lot more sense to me because it's not something necessarily tangible, that you're purchasing.
Yeah. And I think, what, Dave brought up a great point. I mean, Dave, right now, like if you sign up for an account on Cake, my head of customer success is making contact with you in 3 minutes, right? And it's, what questions do you have? So we're not like, come on, right, and create a slice like all digital, right? It's like, hey, do you want to buy? Do you want to sell? Do you want to get a valuation, right? This is how you can do that. I've spent all last week. We've got 3 sellers online right now, right? I spent all last week kind of working through their data with them, right? And so, and we're connecting 2 of them with Kerry Wallace this week. And so, we're I would say like you have starts and stops there on the ability, like as you scale, that becomes more and more painful because there's only more, so much time in the day. But we never foresee a future where there's like no white glove service, no people touch in this, right? What we just want to do is make it those pieces more, I guess, more like effective, right? Like, what you're talking about in that meeting with that person, with that representative from Cake, because it's been easy to get your data and to see it in a place with a valuation or report, kind of an idea of where that's going, right? So instead of this unknown, right, you kind of know what you're talking about. And so we make those moments, we remove friction from them, and we make them more efficient. And like I said, more celebratory, because ultimately this is a celebration, right? You're just talking about your why. You get to drop the rope and head on down to Key West, right? And everyone else kind of has a why of why they're selling, but also a why of why they're buying. And we want to keep the celebration in it and remove kind of the frustration.
Yeah, no, I think that's going to be critical, man. Because I mean, at some point you could have 1,000 to 5,000 listings on there.
Hopefully,
it could get really daunting for somebody. I don't even know that I've asked you this question. I just made the assumption, but I have to believe there's some sort of AI that's also going to be baked into this down the road, if it's not already, where when new slices come up, it's going to automatically cross-reference that to the buyer profiles of people who have conducted transactions, so that maybe they get the drop when a new slice hits before other people based on history. Maybe there's a premium membership that they pay a little more to get the drop. Maybe there's a loyalty program where they get points based on transactions and you reward people for doing more. I don't know. I'm basically sitting here, we're brainstorming now on the podcast, but I mean, I do have to believe that if, for those people who use the platform and do so on a regular basis, that there's benefit there that, they're going to be given as a result of that. Right.
Yeah. So my co-founder was the head of data and algorithms at our previous company. Right. And is come
knows
over
a thing or two.
Yeah, knows a thing or two, and has where he's already made an impact is the book valuation, and that's machine learning powered. But then the recommendations that you're talking about, the matching scores, right? Like that will absolutely have some machine learning beef behind it. But then also, I view it like similar to like Google. I think it as a company, it can be frustrating sometimes on Google, especially one that's starting out early, is that you can't just do keyword matching, right? You can't just do like keyword jargon on the page all the way down, because ultimately Google has two customers. They have the company, and they have the the searcher, right? And similarly, we have two customers. We have the seller and the buyer. And so those buyers you were talking about, if we can verify that you've done a transaction, if we can quantify a little bit of the esoteric, the spiritual side of like how you handled yourself in that transaction, right? And was it a good transaction for the seller and yourself? Do you have verified funding, or are you just kind of like throwing a dart at the wall, right? Like those types of variables on the buy side, we want to match sellers with people that are for real. And similarly for the buyers, we want to bring them slices that make sense for their book, even if it's stuff that they haven't thought of, right? Like I think eventually in that world that you're talking about, we'll want to have access to the buyer's book of business, right? And like their portfolio, because then we can say, hey, this thing came on and it makes a ton of sense for you to look at it. And, giving them that kind of strategic analysis of the slices that are available or the books that are available and how it would fit with their book. And, kind of putting like almost like an NBA trade, mock trade analyzer on the platform for them so that they can model, what does my team look like with Kevin Durant in it, right? Well, what does my portfolio look like? What does my book look like with that slice in it? Those are the types of business intelligence tools that, will very or fairly quickly be at the fingertips for our buyers.
I'm excited, man. I just think this is something, we all have the different things you can follow on Twitter or LinkedIn. There's the agency equity email that comes in every day, but the industry definitely has needed something that's dynamic, real time, something that gives people a reason to go check it every day, and get more logins. I mean, I'm kind of pumped to see what that data looks like, after, Cake's been around for a while. What's the average number of logins per day, per week, per month, or whatever from these people, and then see the correlation from between that and what they're buying and the average size and the number of transactions. I mean, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Well, imagine a world where there's a insurance book Zillow, right? And you can go on and check the value of yours compared to those in your neighborhood, right? Or those that match the
Crazy,
metrics
man.
you have, right? Like that's the type of, like, this is your biggest asset, right? And so being able to understand the value of that thing, and then also the variables that impact that, outside of the magic moment of a successful transaction, giving back that business intelligence, right? Like that's a magic moment for me.
So what have we missed, man?
Yeah, I think not much. So, I mean, the platform's live. Come on and create an account, right? If you do, you're going to hear from me and my buddy, my customer success manager, Dave, very, very quickly. And, if you're interested in selling something, right, create a slice, or you can schedule some time with us to dive into carrier report, book report, right? We can help we can help you in the way that you want to think about it. Also, the valuation tool is up there. It's free. You just have to create an account and check it out. And then if you're looking to buy, we have slices on the platform right now. I think, like I said, getting sellers trust and gaining the momentum there, you're going to see more and more sellers come on over the next 2 months. But yeah, I mean, we're already got really good early traction. Last week was our official launch, and we have over 500 members on the platform right now. And so this is early, you'll see like an early bump just from being the new kid on the block, but we think that we're going to, pretty quickly gain some momentum. And a lot of that's key to folks like you guys giving me some airtime and some advice. Dave, you've been instrumental in just how I'm thinking about this thing. And so excited to build it with you and with some of the other folks that are in the boat rowing with me.
Sweet.
Well, what I heard was you need at least 500 more people to register after this podcast drops.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if anybody else heard that or not, but with the number of people who listen to this podcast and download it every month, that should be a drop in the bucket. Here's what I'm going to tell you, people. This isn't going away. Cake's the first, probably not going to be the last. Other people are going to figure out this works and they're going to try and copy us, but they're not going to cut it. So here's what I would recommend. If you want to be part of the wild ride, go sign up on Cake as soon as you listen to this podcast and just pay attention to what happens. See what's being listed, seeing what's being bought, see what's being sold. And you never know what it might prompt you to do or what idea it may give to you for your own agency that's going to change your game. I think there's a lot of opportunity to increase revenue. I think there's a great opportunity to increase profitability. And you can do it almost instantaneously. And, when you look at how the agencies that have grown the most substantially have grown, it's very, very rarely 100% organic.
Yeah.
I think every agency works their tail off and they organically grow to a point where they need to get an injection. And the next logical step is acquisition. I don't think that any of us understands exactly how much impact an acquisition has immediately on your revenue in how your agency runs until you do the first one. Then when you do the first one, it's like, oh crap, it's kind of probably like running a marathon. It sucks. You train for it, you get through it, you hurt for a couple of days. It's like, all right, when's the next one? Let me go figure out where I'm going. And I think it's probably a lot the same way. I think that buying and selling books of business could be very addictive. Look, buying and selling is where everybody goes, man. It's the first thing we go to do, right? My oldest son buys and sells crap on the internet. He sells sneakers, he sells Lego sets,
Swords.
like anything to turn a buck, man. Anything to turn a dollar.
I don't know. I'm just fucking around.
Oh, okay. I thought
Swords
you
on
actually
the
were selling
internet.
a sword. I was like, man, I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, possibly. But yeah, man, I mean, I think it's a really cool idea. I think that you guys, are coming in at exactly the right time, in my opinion. I feel like if you came in last year, it would have been too early.
Mhm.
I think there was still enough of the institutional money beatdown going on that you probably just wouldn't have had enough interest for people to check it out. And now you do. So, people, Adam, tell them where to go, man. Where do they go to sign up?
www.haveyourcake.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn /Adam Bowe. But yeah, www.haveyourcake.com. You register and create an account there, and we will be in touch very, very quickly. We're excited to have you.
Cool.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, he is and will forever be Adam Bowe, co-founder, CEO of Cake. People, you can have your cake and eat it too. You just got to go sign up for an account. I'm going to be sitting here working on corny marketing slogans the rest of the time. In the meantime, is Marie? Yeah, oh, you do great because Maria, as Maria Antoinette said, let them eat cake, people. Let them eat cake. I'm out. Adam, thanks for your time, man. Really appreciate you spending some time with us. Keep me posted as to how many of those 500 have signed up because I'm going to berate the internet until we hit the number.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Talk to y'all soon. Take care.